It all started in the autumn of 1993. The leaves had started to fall, and the little animals that inhabited the woods ran around no more, and the weather was starting to get cold. I was really young during that time, and I remember my friends and I were very bummed out that summer was over, since for us, summer was the best season of the year. Vacations, good weather, comfortable clothes, ice creams every day, playing in the woods and going to the lake. Pretty much all the good things a child can ask for. Well, a 90s child anyway. As a season, autumn wasn't that bad. We still managed to play around, but it was nowhere near as good as it was in summer. And also, we had much less time since we were already back in school. Our time now was rather limited. We had classes from 9 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. Then we only had an hour or two to play around. Because by 5 o'clock, we had to be home already because it was getting dark. Plus we had homework to do and all those other things that parents would make you do. And since I was little, I had my very close group of friends. Matt, Michael, Teri, and Tiffany. And I knew Michael since I was born because our mothers were good friends, and Matt became close to Michael and I in the 2nd grade. Tiffany and Teri were sisters who lived across the street, and even though we had our little group, we still played and spoke to the other kids from school and from the neighborhood. We lived in a rather small town, so almost everybody knew each other, or at least knew about each other. People, including the children, were very social. Because of this sense of unity and freedom, I've got the best memories of my childhood. But unfortunately, everything changed during that gloomy autumn of 1993. It was a Monday when my friends and I got the news alongside all the other kids at school. A girl called Jackie Mayer never arrived home from school last Friday. She was reported as missing that Friday night, and the police searched through the weekend, but they had no clues regarding her disappearance. Apparently, many of our parents and people in town already knew about it, but just had not told us, so, we wouldn't get scared or something. However, that Monday the police needed to let us know in case any of us knew something about it. Everybody at school was very surprised. We had never heard of anything like that. Well, at least in our town before. Jackie's friends apparently had testified since the weekend. They said that the last time they saw Jackie was when they were walking home from school. Sophie, Jackie's friend, said goodbye to Jackie when she arrived to her house. Jackie was supposed to walk 3 or 4 minutes more before arriving to her house, but she never did. And I personally didn't really know Jackie since she was 2 grades higher than me and lived in a different neighborhood. However, she seemed very sweet and kind. She was the best student of her class and loved by many. At first, police thought her case might have been an accident or something. The small town where we live is surrounded by woods, and there are even some cliffs and lakes around. Most people, including us kids, normally walk through certain parts of the woods on a daily basis to go to school and other places. Everybody walked around the woods since they had paths that were easy to follow, and they served as shortcuts too. Police kept looking for Jackie and told us to be careful, especially around the cliff areas. And although Jackie's disappearance was very sad and worried both adults and kids in town, I don't think anybody thought that was just the first case of many to come. 3 days later on Thursday, police visited us once again, and they did not have good news. This time, a girl from my class had gone missing since Wednesday afternoon. Just like Jackie, she never arrived home. And this girl was called Natasha. When the police asked about Natasha, many kids from my class said that the last time they had seen her was on their way home. And apparently, a big group of kids was walking around. Natasha was with them when all of a sudden, she went missing. Her friends say they didn't worry at first because Natasha sometimes would randomly disappear to go to a creek nearby and feed ducks. And Natasha was a very extroverted and impulsive girl. She was very good at sports and was very popular in the class. I wasn't close to her, but we had played together more than once. When the police told us they believed the two cases were connected and that they were treating them as abductions, well, it was very distressing. We got told to make sure that we were always with someone whenever we were outside and not to leave anyone behind. My friends and I couldn't understand much about the disappearances and why they thought they were abductions. In our innocent young minds, we thought that perhaps both Jackie and Natasha were hiding somewhere, playing around, just avoiding school. And later on that night, when I talked to my parents during dinner, they explained the case a bit better. They said that because two girls had gone missing, and both of them were similar in appearance and similar age, they believed someone had kidnapped them. However, they didn't believe whoever was responsible was someone in town. They thought it was an outsider. And I got told I needed to be careful and not to abandon my friends, especially the girls. Because all this speculations, we didn't think that a boy could be a target until one day. During the next weekend, a boy called Kim Lee disappeared from a park while he was playing baseball with his dad. Kim ran to pick up the baseball when he was last seen. His dad said due to the trees and bushes around, he couldn't see anything. His dad said that the ball didn't even go that far away into the woods, so he wasn't worried about Kim going in there getting the baseball alone. Kim's dad said, all of a sudden, he heard Kim scream, and then he rushed in the direction where his son had headed, but he couldn't see him. His dad looked all over with the help of others who were near the park, but all they found was the baseball. Kim's disappearance happened so fast, and there was nothing his dad could do about it. And after Kim went missing, the focus was no longer on the girls. All the kids were targets. That same Sunday, my parents and I went to the home where my grandma lived. And while being there, we spoke about the disappearances with Grandma. And there was something I found interesting. Whenever my parents mentioned an abduction, Grandma kept saying they weren't abductions. She also mentioned this was just like something that happened back in the 40s. Every time she tried to talk about it, my parents shut her down, saying that it's an old myth. I tried to ask about it, but my parents kept redirecting the conversation somewhere else. So when both my parents left for a few minutes to go buy some dinner, and I was alone with Grandma, I planned to ask her. In fact, I didn't even get to do it, because she was the one who started talking. Earl, I want you to be careful. It's not the first time these disappearances happen, and it's not the last time they will happen. He's awake again. I was confused, yet intrigued. Grandma told me how when she was a kid, the same thing happened, and children in our town went missing. At first, they believed the same as us, that it was a kidnapper. But then some children started to claim they had seen strange things in the woods before seeing other kids disappearing. Thanks to the children's description, people around came to the conclusion that it was a wild animal, although the children knew it wasn't a wild animal. It was something much more sinister. Something they had never seen before. Some sort of demonic creature living in the woods. Adults looked for the creature, but nothing was found, and in the meantime, more children kept disappearing. Then, the children came to a conclusion. The creature could only be seen by them. And when I first heard the story, I didn't know what to believe. Part of me was scared, part of me was hesitant. I asked Grandma, what did the creature look like? She said he looked like a giant dog that was able to walk on 2 feet. She said his face, however, was more similar to that of a human than a canine. And I asked Grandma what ever happened to the children who had been captured by the creature. She said she didn't know. He probably ate them. Grandma said she wasn't sure it was the same creature as before or a different one. However, she did know how to stop him. The last time, the kids gathered in an attempt to try and catch him. When he finally showed up, the kids tried to battle him with rocks and sticks and other things, but nothing ever worked. And one kid that was around happened to be carrying a box of matches. He lit the matches and threw them at the monster. He was not expecting for the matches to work so simply, but they did. So he kept throwing them at the creature one by one, and the more he threw, the more the creature agonized. Grandma, who witnessed all of this at the time, said the creature began to melt. And I wanted to know more about the story, but at that exact time, my parents walked through the door with a couple boxes of pizza and we couldn't continue. The next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about the information Grandma told me. One day after school, my friends and I were wandering through the woods. And normally, whenever school finishes, we played in the woods for a bit. But ever since the disappearances, we had been going straight home. However, that day my friends had other plans. Michael and Matt wanted to play. The rest of us were hesitant, especially me after what Grandma told me. The boys kept insisting and ending up convincing the girls, so that the only one left was me. I had no choice but to stay playing with them, otherwise I would have to go home on my own and expose myself to the creature. I ended up telling my friends the story my grandma told me, and the girls were terrified but the boys thought I was lying. Knowing about the monster made them feel even more curious to stay. I know we shouldn't have stayed, but we ended up doing it, and what happened next wasn't nice. After 20 minutes or so of playing, we even forgot about the fact that there was something to be afraid of. We were totally distracted, running around when all of a sudden, a giant shadow ran towards Michael and got him. It all happened so fast, I don't even think he managed to scream. The rest of us froze. I could tell Tiffany and Teri were terrified. I could even see tears running down their faces. The next thing we knew, Matt tried to run away, but got captured by the same thing. However, this time, the thing didn't run away with Matt. It basically tackled him and tried to eat him. And Matt tried to defend himself with the things he had around, rocks and sticks and stuff. But we knew he couldn't do it on his own. Teri then threw a rock at the creature, and the rock hit its head. And I don't know how this is possible, but this thing turned its head almost 180 degrees. And that's when we could see the disgusting looking face. He was just like Grandma had said, half human, half canine. He was huge and scary. His face had the eyes of a human, but he had the snout of a werewolf. He had giant teeth that looked more like fangs, and every time he breathed, we could smell the stench of his breath. When he turned to look at us, he looked furious. However, this didn't stop Teri, who wanted to help Matt break free of the creature's arms, so she threw another rock. And this is when the creature had enough and left Matt alone, but it came towards Teri. This time, the creature slowly walked towards Teri, and I could only see her trying to move away while Tiffany cried for her sister. And at the moment, I remember I had something in my pocket. I had a box of matches that Grandma had told me to carry. I grabbed the match, lit it, and threw it at the creature. Surprisingly, Grandma was right. It seemed to work. The creature's foot started to peel off, and I could see his skin dissolving until there was nothing left but bone, so I lit another one and did the same. This time, however, I got closer and threw it at his back. Then I did it again and again, and it didn't take long to work. The creature was agonizing and dying in front of our eyes. The weirdest thing is that as he disappeared, black smoke surrounded the area. So much it was hard to see. As all of that was happening, some adults who were nearby came to help us. As all this was happening, and we were screaming and yelling, some adults who were nearby came to help us. And by the time they did, though, the monster was already gone. They helped us walk away from the smoke and asked us what had happened. And before Tiffany and Teri could talk, I answered saying that we had seen a giant animal who attacked our friends. Teri and Tiffany were so shocked they couldn't talk. Matt had fainted and Michael was gone. No matter how bad I wanted to tell the truth, I knew there was no way they would believe us. So it was easier to say that to them. After the commotion happened, I convinced Teri and Tiffany to stick with the wild animal story. Unfortunately, our friend Matt never recovered from the shock. He never spoke again. And once the smoke was gone and the authorities and people in town went to see the area, they never found the corpse or the skeleton of the wild animal. However, they did find the remains of Jessica, Kim, Natasha, and Michael, right in the same place where we burned that monster. Everybody else assumed that a wild animal had attacked and eaten the children, but me and my friends will always know the truth, that it was something much scarier. Years later, and I still live in the same town with my wife Teri. We never told anybody but my grandma about what we saw that day. We know people are skeptical, and we would be thought of as crazy. However, we are here for the children, because we know that thing would come back, and we want to let them know how to escape from it before it's too late.